I'm going to pick up on the themes of the last two speakers and talk specifically about benefits, in this case retirement benefits, and then also spend a fair bit of time talking about tax credits. Before I get started, I do actually, let me go back one. Before I get started, I do want to do a quick shout out to the whole Gusto team for this great event. Really appreciate it. I think my wife is really delighted that I'm out of the home office, and I'm told that my dog misses me dearly. So hopefully all of you are that are in the room really appreciate being here, and it's great to see the Zoomies out there too. So I want to thank the Gusto team for that. I also want to thank them for being just a really tremendous partner for us at Guideline over the last 6 years. We've been working with them since 2016. And it's just been a really great partnership. A little bit about Guideline real quick. We launched in 2016. As Greg mentioned, we're up over $6 billion in total retirement assets on our platform today. Over 30,000 small business clients, actually pretty close to 35,000, but our lawyers made me keep it at just over 30,000, so we're right there, humming along. A couple things that make us unique. The co-founders of the company had worked together at a company called TaskRabbit, and very much came to the idea of Guideline of their experience with the 401k plans there, but also very much with a tech mindset. They were, had worked in software before, not in financial services. And so the first thing they wanted to do was like, hey, how do we build this thing from scratch and really do it with a software mindset? So one of the things they did first was build the record-keeping system, which is kind of the back-end technology system from scratch in-house. Took the better part of a year to actually build that out. Then at that point, what they did was found a great partner in Gusto. Back then, it was actually Zen Payroll, if anyone remembers that, and got a really great, what I still consider very much the best-in-class integration between our 401k system and Gusto's payroll. And I think the important thing around that is it actually really lowers the cost of administering 401k plans, which makes them much more accessible to even the smallest businesses. And so when we think about our mission at Guideline and how we serve and who we're focused on serving, it's very much around that, which is, hey, how do we bring the cost down as much as possible? How do we keep the cost really low for the employee participants or the investors in the plan? And then at the same vein, and we'll talk about this, how do we align our pricing to map up really tightly with the available tax credits for new 401k plans, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. So we're hoping this mission and that focus really resonates for you and all of your clients. So actually, let me go back and ask two quick questions. I'm stealing my thunder on my slides. Okay, back, there we go. How many people in the room actually have a 401k plan themselves through their employer? Okay, good, that's about what I expected, maybe 2/3 to 3/4. For the accountants in the room, how many of you have actually helped any of your clients set up a new 401k plan? There we go, a couple. Yeah, okay, so that's more representative of what we actually see in the marketplace, which is 401k plans are really underpenetrated for small businesses. There's a massive access gap that is out there. So about 6 million employers or small businesses with 1 to 100 employees, and only about 600,000 401k plans in that segment. And so we think there's this tremendous opportunity to help educate the marketplace and focus on serving them really well. And that's what I'm gonna spend time talking to you all about. What's interesting for us is, we're not the only force at work here. So I will show some more on the role of public policy as we get into this. Let me say two more points on this real quick. When you translate that into the impact on the workforce, it's actually tens of millions of small business workers that don't have access to a retirement plan. It's really quite a tragedy, because if you don't have an opportunity to invest through your employer, you really are unlikely to save for your future self. And then when you translate that into dollars, in aggregate, there's a $7 trillion shortfall in the retirement system in the US today, so it turns into real money. Okay. A little bit about what we're seeing at Guideline real quick. We are actually seeing if you're able to give small businesses a really targeted, well-crafted 401k plan for them, you're gonna see a lot of growth. We've grown really rapidly since we launched in 2016 and through the pandemic. And then in particular, what we've seen is this real acceleration around new plan formation, new 401k plans. So the data that you see here, 2019, 89% of our clients were setting up new plans for the very first time, and 11% were converting over from an existing provider. Fast forward to, I don't want to say the other side of the pandemic, we're all here, so I think we're mostly there. But as of last year, 96% of our clients had signed up. Last year, there's a little over 11,000 that signed up with us last year. Over 10,000 of them were setting up brand new 401k plans that year. So there is an element of, if you focus on this customer set and give them an offering that works for them, small businesses will come and set up new plans. Now let's look at what this means in terms of the employees. We feature auto enrollment. We're actually the only 401k provider out there that I've come across that all our plans have auto enrollment. What that means is at the employee level, they are opt out versus opt in. And so we see really high participation rates among the employees on our platform. So about 85% pretty consistently across our client base. So they participate at a high rate. And then the other thing that's been really gratifying and candidly somewhat surprising to me is if you look at the amount of contributions that the end investors or participants have been making over time, it's actually climbed during the COVID period too, despite all the economic uncertainty over the last couple of years. So we're about $650, and these were monthly contributions by the typical employee on our platform. And then in 2021, just last year, it was sneaking up to almost $800 per month that each employee on average is contributing into their own 401k plan. Great. So we are not the only force at work. There's a lot of public policy work being done on this, and I'm going to spend most of the rest of the talk focused on that. And so bear with me while I nerd out on the public policy stuff. And I see Steve, the Gusto head of public policy, back there nodding at me. He's swimming in this stuff too, and is another great resource if you can corner him in the happy hour. So just a quick history lesson. 2006, George W. Bush signed into law the Pension Protection Act. There was a lot in there. Each of these retirement bills, they're like packed, chock full of stuff. But at this one in particular, I think the thing that I would focus on the most is actually the advent of a safe harbor to enable auto-enrollment in 401k plans. And over the course of the last 16 years, we've seen just a dramatic increase in participation rates, specifically because of this opt-out structure being much more common at the employee level versus opt-in. And it's also had a broadly democratizing effect in that women are much more likely to participate at a much higher rate, and then as well as people of color, and then younger workers as well. So it's had a really great impact overall. And then fast forward to 2019. At the very end of 2019, Congress passed the Secure Act, and Trump signed it into law. It was really broadly bipartisan. There were a number of different provisions in this bill as well, but I think the most important thing for this group to take away is a real focus on tax credits for new 401k plans in the Secure Act. So basically two things happened at that point. One, there was an existing tax credit for starting new 401k plans at that point. It was $500 per year for each of the first 3 years. In the Secure Act, they took that tax credit from $500 a year up to $5,000 a year for each of the first 3 years. It is capped at 50% of your plan administration fees, but that was a pretty dramatic increase, a tenfold increase from $500 up to $5,000 per year. And then they added an altogether new tax credit focused on auto enrollment in new 401k plans. And that's worth another $500 per year for each of the first 3 years. So in total, it's up to $16,500 in potential tax credits for your clients for setting up new plans, and especially those that have auto enrollment in them. So where's all this going? There's actually a lot of movement towards a follow-up piece of legislation, potentially called the Secure Act 2.0. The US House actually passed, it kind of blows my mind, over 400 votes in the full US House to pass this version of the Secure Act. I mean, it's hard to imagine the Congress actually passing anything with 400 votes at this point, but earlier this year that happened in March. So it's really broad bipartisan support around that. So that needs to be reconciled with two different versions of a bill that are in the relevant Senate committees. There's something called the EARN Act, which is in the Senate Finance Committee, and then there's the Rise and Shine Act, which is in the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. So the expectation, and it seems like the odds of this passing keep going up. The word I'm hearing is this is likely to pass in the lame duck session after the election later this fall. I wouldn't be surprised, like the Secure Act, if it's banged out between Christmas and New Year's. And so it would need to reconcile these three bills. There's broad bipartisan support, as I mentioned, and then a number of the think tanks in DC and also in the states that are working to kind of help bring this together and focus on broadening access for small businesses. A couple things in there. That 50% cap I mentioned, that could go up to 100%. So that notion of getting up to the $16,500 tax credit for the first 3 years for starting new plans, that could become much more real, that literally you could get it entirely a free plan in terms of being, as a small business, in terms of offsetting your costs with these tax credits. Certainly would for the typical guideline plan. The first 3 years would be free for most of our plans at that cost. So that would be one thing. And then the other part is they're looking at introducing a new type of safe harbor plan. I'll spare you the details on that, but you can avoid some of these non-discrimination tests if any of you are familiar with those. The idea is this kind of starter plan, which would make it so you wouldn't necessarily have to do an employer match as a small business, and you would still be able to get a safe harbor plan that doesn't go through these complex non-discrimination tests. So it's this idea of how do we make this even more accessible to even more small businesses, especially in the case there where some of the small businesses may not be in a position to do an employer match for their employees. All right, so that's all at the federal level. There's a lot going on at the state level too. You can see here, and that's kind of the point. There's like a lot of movement. Take away a couple things from this. 12 US states have actually passed their own legislation and are building out programs, and I'll get into some of the detail here in a minute. But there's another 20 to 30, I'm looking at Steve, about that many, 20 to 30 more states that are either working on a piece of legislation in state committees. So this is like happening, it's really moving. There was some coalescing around the type of programs that these are. They generally feature a mandate. So as a small business, it depends on the size and by state, and I'll get into some of that, that you either need to set up a 401k plan or potentially a SEP IRA, or maybe even a 403b, one of those types of qualified plans, or you need to use a state program, which is typically coming in the form of an auto IRA, which is a Roth IRA with auto enrollment in, okay? So I'll take you through a couple examples to make this a little more grounded. So this is California. I'm based in California. It's actually our biggest state in terms of market. So there's a program in California called Cal Savers, exactly what I described. You know, state mandate, you need to have a retirement plan. You can use one from a private provider, from like Guideline or somebody else, or you need to use a state program, which is again, this kind of Roth auto IRA. They had a very significant deadline earlier this year. At the end of June, all small businesses in California with 5 or more employees needed to set up a retirement plan. I'm looking around if everyone knew that, right? You probably have some clients in California that might have more than 5 employees. So that is the big spike in the data that you're seeing here. A couple things about that. They have one other additional wave that they just passed, and Governor Gavin Newsom signed into law just a couple weeks ago. They're actually going to take that 5-employee threshold and take it down to as low as soon as you hire your first employee, you would need to set up a retirement plan. That kicks into effect in 2023. Those small businesses would have until the end of 2025 to actually comply with that. Okay, so there's plenty of time on that. But if you have small businesses in California as clients with 5 or more employees, you need to get on this. The tax penalties for those clients that are not in compliance will take effect the middle of next year. And again, they can sign up for Cal Savers or they can set up a 401k plan. All right, we're in Colorado. Colorado's a big player in this as well. They're working on a program right now. Their upcoming deadline will be October 2023. That is for small businesses with 5 or more employees. And then they're also doing something really interesting, which is, in the first of its kind, they're actually working with the state of New Mexico to create this kind of cross-state collaboration and kind of partner there. And I suspect we'll see more of that, where some of the states will kind of work together on some of their programs. All right, 3 more examples in some of the states. Oregon, Illinois, and California were actually the first 3 states that got going on this. And so let me just kind of move through this. You can see some of the deadlines. Connecticut's the most recent program. And then I'll just point out, I think, the real important thing for all of you, which is there's not a broad awareness about this. We found in a survey that we did of 800 California residents that three quarters of them had not actually heard of Cal Savers yet. So there's a big opportunity to kind of spread the word. And we're hoping that you can play a role in that. We have a platform called Guideline for Accountants. It's at guideline.com/accountants, and you can learn a lot more there. And we also have some great people at our booth that can help answer some of your questions. Great, appreciate the time. Thank you.